Do you know what a batting tee is? Yeah, it's that little baseball thing that young kids use in rec league t-ball. If you're a baseball player, the batting tee is cornerstone to growth and pursuing your potential. I believe that all people have unrealized potential, and that pursuing the space between where we are and where we could be is at the heart of life's richest experiences. Somehow for me, that all started with a batting tee and a desire to play Major League Baseball. In 2007, my college team, the University of San Diego, was in the NCAA tournament, live on ESPN. And I found myself in one of those situations that kids dream up in the backyard all the time. Ninth inning, down by 3, runners on base. You get the picture. But you have to understand how I got to that at bat in the first place. Statistically speaking, the most common pitch in baseball is the fastball on the outside part of the plate. It's the highest percentage pitch for a strike in the toughest part of the hitting zone. So that's where I put my batting tee as a kid. Hundreds of swings a day. From ages 8 and 9 to well into my 20s, I drilled my swing for one pitch in one location, over and over again, hundreds of thousands of times. In the most consequential moment of my career thus far, I realized I'd prepared for this my whole life. Hitting is hard. Hitting is a little less hard when you have a plan. So in my big moment, my plan was to hunt one pitch in one location. Any guesses? That's right, fastball away. I put a swing on this pitch that had been more than a decade in the making. Time slowed down. I could see the ball make contact with my bat. I felt nothing. I heard nothing. And as the ball left the stadium, it was actually the sound of the crowd that brought time out of slow motion. I rounded the bases as my teammates filed out of the dugout. And there was even a picture of the mob at home plate on the cover of the San Diego Union Tribune the next morning. Several years later, my pursuit of baseball ended after an unremarkable professional career in the San Diego Padres minor league system. But I realized it was how I went about my goal, relentlessly and passionately, towards my potential that ultimately set me apart. And this was in stark contrast to what I observed in the real world, where most adults traded a pursuit like that one for one that just paid the bills and didn't ruffle too many feathers. You know, I tell the story of that big home run not because it was some massive success. Quite the opposite. What you don't know about that home run is it was in the top of the 9th, and it tied the game. And the batter after me would ground out to the third baseman, and about 10 minutes later, we would lose in the bottom of the 9th, ending our season. So that big, sexy moment that I trained my whole life for didn't matter just 10 minutes later. Or did it? My name is Logan Gelbrich, and I'm the founder of DEUCE Gym in Venice Beach, California. And I'm here to tell you that what I know about pursuing your potential is if you do it right, it doesn't even matter if you win in the end.
In 2007, I was also doing what most people would consider unthinkable. Running around with a needle hanging out of my arm and a pistol in the other, robbing every drug dealer who would fit in the trunk of my car. Any unattached observer would assume that I'd die in the streets. Growing up, it was always hard for me to feel like I belonged anywhere. In a lot of ways, my life has been about searching for what family really is and means. I'm adopted. Running with a crew gave me what I thought I was looking for. I knew that I could always be the one to raise my hand and put in work, and I would be distinguished. Running the streets landed me exactly where I thought I was destined to go. Prison. I got a 10-year sentence for a series of aggravated robberies on dope houses. On the streets, I thought I was a bad motherfucker. Incarceration, however, presented me with what Logan would call disconfirming information. I was maybe 100 pounds soaking wet, coming off about a 2-gram-a-day heroin habit. My first fight in the county jail was over my right to eat the trays that were slid in the housing pot. Being in such bad shape, I realized something had to change. So I started working the pads and hitting push-ups. This wild thing happened. Began to lose fewer fights. Well, at first I began to lose them in a less devastating fashion. But this shift was incredibly powerful for me. For the first time in my life, I realized that I could change things about myself that I didn't like. I grew up thinking that we were all just born in certain environments with certain abilities, and that was it. I thought I was stuck like everyone else I knew. This experience let me know that I could change things about myself that I didn't like. And the first part of my journey was all about physiological transformation, about changing my body, because that's the only thing that I understood. Several years in, I realized that other things had to change about myself as well. And a large part of my transformation began when I took a long, hard look at myself and realized there was a lot that I didn't like. My experience with training showed me that this didn't have to be permanent. Showed me that if I was willing to put in the work, I could change. And I wish I could tell you that that change was instant and easy. But just like getting strong, personal transformation takes a lifetime of work. I'm Campbell Lillard, co-founder of DEUCE Community Inc, and I'm here to tell you that change is more about the process than it is about the outcome.
In a way, traversing the gap from who we are to who we could be is a leadership question. We have a very simple definition for leadership, which says that to be in leadership is to be responsible for the results. Based on what you've learned from Campbell, you could see how he and others might look at his life and just think that's just the way that it is. And there's not much more to it than that. It would take leadership of epic proportions if his life was going to change.
Getting out of prison was one of the most terrifying things I've ever done. I didn't know how to navigate it. Inside prison, I got comfortable. I became good at prison. I learned how to gain status and live comfortably. I knew that none of these things would be afforded to me on the outside. I didn't really feel like I could have any life outside of gangbanging, but I decided to pursue the one thing that I was really passionate about. I set out to become a strength and conditioning coach. In the process of doing this, I had the foresight to relentlessly seek out mentorship. Major obstacle here was that not many people wanted to mentor someone like me with my background and the lack of professional experience and baggage that came with it. Logan was one of only 2 people to respond to my request, and he was the only one that didn't require I had a college degree or a body of published work. He did, however, require that I show levels of trust, willingness, and leadership to work with him. Doing so led us from an email conversation to a mentorship to me moving from Texas to California to try to work for him, to founding a nonprofit, to a friendship that I'm forever grateful for. This progression wouldn't have been possible without, on both of our parts, increasing levels of trust, willingness, leadership, and a few shared beliefs. One of those beliefs is that peak fulfillment in life lies in relentlessly pursuing the space between where we are and where we're trying to go. For me, that's where all the money's at, and it's what inspires me about training. It's not about the barbell, it's about growth. I could tell you stories about people in our programs who didn't successfully complete the program based on any performance metric that we have or a donor has, but who for the first time were amongst a community that supported in them, believed them, and held them accountable. And as a result of that, the way they view themselves is forever changed, as is the way they interact with the world.
If it's not obvious enough already, Campbell and I are very different. He hates my music and the way that I dress. I once said his music sounds like the second half of a car crash. You know, the tough thing about human transformation, though, is we can't see ourselves. We need people and experiences to reflect back on us about how we can be better. As different as Campbell and I are, I need him to show me how I can improve. Just last year, I was fortunate enough to learn about my avoidant, ineffective leadership behavior. And this is coming from the guy who gave up his whole life in Texas to move across the country to some peculiar gym in Venice. Campbell's feedback hits hard when you know how much this means to him.
I thought that I was moving to Venice so Logan could show me how to be a better coach. Several years into the game, however, I realized he cares very little for my aptitude and technical proficiency as a coach. He's most concerned with my growth and capacity for leadership. You see, we all have an edge, a space at the fringe of our ability where only peak efforts will push us forward and transform us. You might be thinking about yours now, but imagine a world in which you were unable to realize the best version of yourself because of a barrier, A barrier that had been put in place to hold you back because of the person you used to be. We're trying to change this reality for men and women who are coming off the streets and out of prison. And it starts with placing them inside environments where they're encouraged to take increasing levels of responsibility and ownership. Last night I had a crisis. I found myself in a room full of people who are articulate, well-educated, and who are driving some of the most important change in the country. And I asked myself what I was doing there. I asked myself why I made it out. Why this fool? And then I realized that it doesn't matter. But that I did have a responsibility. Almost anybody that I banged with or served time with could be standing up here talking. And all of those people would feel that same responsibility. I called some of them friend. I called a few of them brother. I called most of them enemies. But any one of them would feel the burden of the people who didn't make it out and of the people who are coming out after them. And that's why I'm standing here today. And that's why I have an obligation to ask you two things. One, be honest with yourself about what your edge is and lean in, because the world doesn't get any better if we don't. And two, look at the work we are doing. If it speaks to you, help us help the men and women in our programs do the things the world has been telling them isn't possible.
That was great.
Nice job.